Main Street, Lincoln, New Mexico. In 1878, President Rutherford B. Hayes called this 1-mile strip of dirt on the western frontier the deadliest street in America. Today, Lincoln is a quiet, peaceful town, historically preserved much as it was during its heyday in the late 1800s. Tourists roam its streets and visit its museums. You'd be hard-pressed to imagine Lincoln as the center of a bloody cattle and merchant war, but in 1878, this peaceful hamlet erupted in violence. From that war came Lincoln's most notorious resident, one William H. Bonney, better known as Billy the Kid. Asking people even today about the kid elicits strong reactions and even stronger opinions.
When I say Billy the Kid, what comes to mind?
A cold-blooded killer.
Outlaw, Billy the Kid.
I was gonna say mass murder, but I was just joking with him this whole time. I don't know.
Seems like a pretty cool guy. Outlaw.
Outlaw.
Oh man, that's... Don't know what to say about that.
Good guy, bad guy, or maybe somewhere in between. What do you think?
Somewhere in between. I don't know.
He's a pretty good
I
dude.
don't know.
Good dude?
I'll go with good guy.
Great.
Why?
Well, I mean, it was a different time, and he was kind of a victim of his time and his circumstance.
Somewhere in between me.
Bad.
Bad? How come bad?
He hasn't done anything to prove me wrong. He killed a man in cold blood.
Do you think if his mother had lived, he died when
I really
she died,
do.
that
I
he would have
really
turned out
think
differently?
she would have really changed history.
The Oxford Dictionary defines history as the study of past events, particularly in human affairs. The history of William H. Bonney and the Lincoln County War has been studied and debated for over 100 years. From historians to Old West enthusiasts, to those that knew him and those that didn't, the story of this young man, this kid, has been told, written, and rewritten countless times. As every individual has their own perception of the kid, so too does everyone have their own reality of him. It's finally time for them to speak for themselves. Brought back to modern day for one final interview, the story of Billy the Kid and the Lincoln County War will be told by those that lived it, once and for all, and in their own words. Every boy's story begins at birth, and as such begins with his mother. Catherine Antrim was the mother of young Henry McCarty, whom the world was destined to know as Billy the Kid. Catherine died before ever knowing what became of her two sons, and how one of them changed the course of history.
My name is Catherine Antrim. Originally Ireland, but I've lived all over. I lived in Kansas and Indiana and Colorado, eventually New Mexico. Yes, I do have a family. I have 2 young boys, and I have a husband. My boys' names are Henry and Josie, and my husband's name is William Antrim.
My name is William H. Bonney. or you may know me as Billy the Kid.
I spent time in Wichita, Kansas. I worked in the laundry and I had boarders. I just found lots of odd ways to make money. I always pride myself on being a strong businesswoman, and I try to teach that to my boys.
I was born in New York City. My mother Catherine lived there. Younger brother Joseph moved out west when I was young.
At the time that we lived in Wichita, William and I were not married.
That's where she met William Antrim, my stepdad.
I left Wichita with my family to head to Colorado because I have consumption. We thought it would be best to head west to a drier climate. The doctor said it would ease my condition.
While we were there, my mom got sick. Consumption.
From Colorado, no, we didn't stay there very long. We went down to Santa Fe, and we actually got married there.
So that's where everything kind of changed for us. Left not too long after that, went down to Silver City.
We had looked around at a lot of different locations. Silver City was just, it had a lot of prospecting for Antrim, and there were prospects for myself to be able to start another laundry, and my boys could go to school. That was very, very important to me.
I like Silver City. This was the first place that really felt like home. Finally had some friends, was having fun in school. I like to read, like to sing, make people laugh, tell stories. I had a lot of fun when I was a little kid.
Well, life in Silver City was good to start. There was my laundry, there was the boys going to school, there was neighbors. We had lovely neighbors. But Antrim started to go away and go out on prospects for longer and longer periods of time.
And Joe was a little bit more quiet. Still fun to hang around with, but I preferred kids my own age. Still though, you know, he's family, he's blood, so anyone steps up to him, you know, they step up to me.
Antrim and I, we loved each other. Or we cared for each other. But as I got sicker and sicker with consumption, I felt he couldn't handle it. I felt that should I go, my boys would not be secure with him.
Turns out though, the dry climate didn't really help my mother. She kept getting sicker.
As I got sicker and sicker, I saw less and less of Antrim.
She would cough up blood. It was an ugly sight.
But my Henry was always there.
It was hard to watch her like that. Just watch her wither away like that wasn't easy for me or Joe.
You will have endless coughing fits. You feel that you are crawling inside with chills. You have fevers that don't go away. No one can help you. They tell you that dry climate helps. And it does. It does for a period of time. But you're alone. It will take you in the end. My greatest fear was that they wouldn't be cared for, that they would just be alone. I thought that he would be their stepfather, but he never really was. I just told them to remember I loved them and to remember the things I taught them. At the end of my life, the last day of my life, I'm sitting in my room. The light's streaming in. I can hear the noises from outside, but I can't join any of the people. I feel scared. For myself. I don't know where I'm going. And nobody is with me. Henry always wanted to be with me. He would sit on my bed during the coughing fits, no matter how long they took. But I couldn't have him see that. So I asked him to go. And of course, Antrim was not there. And then your soul, it eventually goes. It goes.
Mom passed, and I had to dig her grave myself. Imagine that 12-year-old kid digging his own mom's grave.
Henry dug my grave. I'm sorry to Henry.
Uncle Bill decided to go out prospecting after that. Left me and Joe on our own. Didn't really want the kids around. Where my mother had love for me and Joe, he only had responsibility and obligation. And when she was gone, that was that with us.
I don't know what my boys did. I hope they became strong businessmen. They always were kind of rugged and wild at times, but why? Why are you asking? What happened to my boys? What happened to my boys? They were good boys. Tell me. Tell me.
Left on his own, Billy soon fell under the influence of some less than desirable elements of frontier society. After being arrested several times for petty theft, young Billy killed his first man in Arizona. Fleeing Arizona for New Mexico, he found a kindred spirit in the leader of a band of rustlers named the Boys, Jesse Evans.
Well, it doesn't matter where I'm from. It doesn't matter where I'm going. Just what do you want to talk about?
After Antrim left, I was on my own. I didn't have any family anymore, so I had to do what I had to do to survive.
Hear tell that he was already a murderer by then, twice over, but he was just a kid like any other. He was young. He was a little foolish.
Yeah, I killed Cahill when I was 17. Son of a bitch. He was just a bully, and then got what was coming to him. And I'm here and he's not, so that's that.
The Boys are a group of people that have decided to follow me around because of when I'm in a gunfight, my blood don't boil. I'm cool and I'm calm, and I know where I'm putting my bullets. Being quick don't mean anything. But when you've got a level head and you're a little scary, people will follow you. They'll either do it out of fear or they'll do it out of respect for what you can do. Fear is a better motivator, but my boys respect me.
Had to skin out of Arizona, back to New Mexico territory. That's when I started riding with the boys, Jesse Evans' gang.
The kid? Yeah, I think he goes by William Bonney now. Nobody knows what his real name is yet. But he just kind of hooked up with us. He was kind of entertaining. You know, he'd dance around and sing to get everybody happy. And so we just let him follow along. He needed somebody to travel with. I'm sure he was on the run just like the rest of us were.
Jesse Evans, he was in charge of the gang, but it was only because he was there first. I imagine it wasn't long before I took over that gang.
Kid wasn't a leader. He was just a kid.
Upon arriving in Lincoln County with the Evans gang, Billy saw the possibility of a new life. He befriended Doc Scurlock, Charlie Bowdry, Dick Brewer, and a wealthy young Englishman named John Tunstall. Tunstall had recently acquired a ranch and opened a store in Lincoln to challenge the monopoly of the Murphy Dolan store, or as it was known, the House. Brewer hired Billy to work at Tunstall's ranch, thereby setting the young man on a path that none of them could possibly have foreseen.
But he made it to Lincoln with us, then decided to part ways.
Decided to leave the Evans gang, went up to Lincoln County. That's where I met Doc Scurlock, Charlie Bowdry. They were good people. I liked it there. Thought that'd be a good place to call home for a bit.
He was young, happy-go-lucky, not too knowledgeable to begin with about what we were doing, but he picked it up real quick. He was real eager to please. Just a happy-go-lucky kid.
Dick Brewer had hired this kid named Billy to work at Tunstall's ranch, and Billy was friendly enough and happy-go-lucky enough and always happy and joking, and he was pretty good with a shooting iron too. And that's how I met him.
Decided to stick around for a while, so met a man named Dick Brewer, who's the foreman of John Tunstall's ranch. Decided to hire me as a cowhand there.
I knew William Bonney just a very little bit. I knew that he was just one of the other men that was hired by my foreman. And, I knew very little. He was in my employees.
I liked spending time with Doc and Bowdry. We'd go out, practice our shooting, gamble a little. They would drink, I would go dance, sweet talk the ladies. I was always a little bit better at that than they were.
He was pretty good with the women, though. They seemed to like him. He liked to make them laugh. Women like to laugh.
Yeah, I had a lot of girlfriends. You know, nothing too serious, but a face like this and a personality, you know, they couldn't resist it. Tunstall, I had a lot of respect for that man.
He had a ranch and he had a big store downtown, and he had a going business, and we were all looking to make something out of our lives, including Billy and all of us. And Mr. Tunstall made us a good example, and Billy took on that right away.
I didn't know him very long, and I don't know what impression I made on him, but I liked the way he carried himself.
Well, Mr. Tunstall was around, you know, touch and go. Sometimes he was around and sometimes he wasn't. He knew Billy like the rest of us did, except that he was not around that much. We probably knew him better than Billy did. And, you know, he liked him. Otherwise he wouldn't let Dick hire him. But I don't think they knew each other a whole lot, because
I feel like William didn't have anywhere else to go, so he dedicated most of just about his life to my ranch and to myself.
He would have been king of Lincoln County one day. And I want to be just like him.
If Tunstall thought that the Irish monopoly would simply allow an Englishman to set up shop and encroach upon their business, he would soon find out just how mistaken he was. With the town's economy controlled by the House and its laws overseen by their man, Sheriff William Brady, Dolan and Murphy ruled Lincoln with an iron fist. Without a shot being fired, the wheels that started the Lincoln County War were already set in motion.
My name is James Dolan.
My name is John Henry Tunstall.
Sheriff William Brady of Lincoln County, New Mexico.
My name is Alexander McSween.
Yes, I do own a mercantile business along with Lawrence Murphy. I got started because I have a good head for business. And he's all right. I just need someone to kind of do a little bit of the heavy lifting for me.
Well, how I met John Tunstall is a very long story indeed. I started as legal representation for two men named Lawrence Murphy and James Dolan, who ran the only mercantile business in Lincoln County.
Everything that they did, it was a monopoly. And I just didn't feel like it was right.
I controlled all of the economy in Lincoln County, and you bet your sweet bottom it was by design.
Murphy and Dolan had a monopoly over the town of Lincoln, and I wanted to break it.
Everything was fine until that Englishman Tunstall came in. And then we started having some problems.
While I was in Santa Fe, I met a lawyer named Alexander McSween.
Over dinner, we talked about business opportunities in the territory of New Mexico, and I encouraged him to look into Lincoln County.
Found my land. I found where I wanted to have this ranch. It was on the Rio Feliz.
Murphy and Dolan, they had a business known as the House in Lincoln County, and they had a stranglehold on the local economy.
After opening up my ranch, I decided to get involved in opening up a mercantile store and also a bank.
Well, when Tunstall McSweeney came to town, kind of odd to see them in alliance, but, kind of knew McSweeney. A little bit of a ruffian, if you will. Definitely not on the caliber of a gentleman like me.
He came in and tried to cut in on Murphy and Dolan in the store and tried to take away some of the money that they was actually paying me to make sure that the law was being enforced in Lincoln County.
They were bitter. They were bitter about that.
McSween's wife warned us. She was very nervous about us getting into the merchant business, that we may die.
Well, my wife, Susan, she had a way of looking out for me, and she warned me that the mercantile business in Lincoln County was very dangerous. In fact, she warned me that there was a good chance that I would be murdered, and John would be murdered along with me.
When Tunstall came and opened up that ranch of his and what he would call a mercantile, I was a little perturbed that he didn't come and talk to me about it first. I was what all the business in Lincoln County went through. How could he even think to compete with someone like me?
Tunstall was just like all the other wealthy Englishmen, coming over here, trying to enforce his will and the old country's will on what we had going here in America. And I myself wasn't going to stand for that, nor were Dolan and Murphy going to allow that to happen.
Did I feel that I had to beat Tunstall? No. I already had the upper hand. I knew that he'd peter out sooner or later. So it wasn't really what I would call competition. It was battle of the wits with an unarmed opponent.
I underestimated how strong they were.
Yes, owned and operated by Murphy and Dolan. Primarily taking cattle up to Fort Stanton there and Fort Sumner and selling it to the Army to make money off of that. And that's what Tunstall was wanting to make his profits off of. There was only room enough for one, and the House was operating it all in Lincoln County.
I say the intention is just to make the New Mexico territory great again.
Well, the store did, shall we say, own the note on my particular land out there. But I figured as long as I'm the law for them, I'd be fine as far as making sure my debts were taken care of.
Well, I was friendly with Sheriff Brady. I mean, part of that friendship probably came from his indebtedness, but you've got to keep your business acquaintances close and your enemies even closer.
Sheriff Brady was a slave to the whiskey and a tool of the house.
Well, I wouldn't say I have control over anyone. What I would say is that people make up their minds based on their circumstances. Let's just say that Sheriff Brady's circumstances weren't optimal.
Brady, slave to the whiskey.
It's been stated that Sheriff Brady liked to drink, and whiskey in particular. Was he ever indebted to the whiskey? No, I don't think so. I mean, how can you be indebted to something that's supplied to you by someone on a regular basis?
Let's just say here in Lincoln County, I am the law, and I'll enforce the law the way I see fit.
With the Princeton insurance policy, by this time I was no longer working for Dolan. I had a hold of the $10,000, and I still had some residual work that I had done for James, and I was worried about James's trustworthiness, and I decided to tell him that I would not turn over the $10,000 until he paid me.
Whether he was embezzling or not, according to history, is a moot point. The law stated that that money was not his.
It was none of my concern, and everybody thought that McSween and I were actual business partners, but we in fact weren't.
Well, whether McSweeney and Tunstall were partners or not, I'm sure that McSweeney owed Tunstall money and Tunstall owed McSweeney money, so it was just a collaboration. Going after Tunstall was just business.
But of course, that's where all the trouble initially started.
Well, when the court enforced my lawsuit and I had the sheriff go out there and serve it with the writ, I believe his words were something to the effect of, "You can't fight at City Hall."
Well, my particular orders with the writ was to go down and serve it to McSween, and I was on my way down to the particular store at the time, to the Tunstall store McSween was, to actually hand him that writ and demand the payment for it.
Sheriff Brady, he was very overzealous. He was very quick to believe that I was a man that would embezzle that money, and that couldn't have been farther from the truth. I am a man of God, and I am a man of honesty.
When Sheriff Brady and a posse came to my business, I was quite frustrated. Everything that I worked hard to get was being close to taken away.
Well, I kind of understand that they were working together, McSween and Tunstall were. And so what one had, I'm sure the other was going to inherit, or at least share with them back to back as they were going. They might not have officially been partners, but everybody knew they were working together.
And he believed that John and I were business partners, and to settle this dispute of $10,000, he began stealing John's property.
The writ that I had was for $10,000, and of course there was plenty of property to cover that, but I wanted to make sure that I myself and my employer, the people that I kind of worked for, that we would be able to collect everything we needed to.
When Brady attached that $40,000 lien to products in Tunstall's store, I don't think it was at my direction per se, but it was definitely in my best interest.
Aside from my store, he went to the extremes and went to my ranch and to my cattle. He thought that they belonged to McSween, when in fact, McSween did not own any of them. They were all mine.
Attaching the Tunstall Farm and Mercantile through McSweeney, a lot of people want to know if that was my direction. I wouldn't say it was my direction, but it was definitely my intent.
But when we were going after more horses, that's exactly kind of what we was aiming for. To go out there and make sure that he didn't have anything left. All the collateral that we could gather up was what we were after. And so we were after those horses to bring back as well, to make sure that everything for the writ would be taken care of and paid for.
It's very fair to say that I did not object to him doing that at all. He was just doing his job as he saw fit underneath the confines of the law.
At this point, I knew that I needed to hire gunslingers that I knew would be good in keeping myself and my ranch safe.
This whole ordeal, it was just taken way too far. And it could have been avoided if everyone had just followed the law.
I wouldn't break it any law. The law in Lincoln County is the sheriff, and that sheriff's me.
Tunstall, infuriated with Brady's attachment process, resolved that his horses, at least, would not be taken as well. He and his regulators drove 9 of them from the ranch on the Feliz, headed toward Lincoln. The date was February 18th, 1878, a date which will be remembered in New Mexico history as the day the Lincoln County War began.
Well, I wouldn't say I gave any special instructions to Morton or any of the others that was there. But being housemen and Murphy and Dolan men, they knew what was expected, and, well, things may have gotten a little out of hand, maybe.
That day there, we didn't actually know where Tunstall was going to be, but Sheriff Brady wanted to talk to him. We'd been riding all over chasing 9 horses. And finally, we could tell we were getting close to him.
Well, Jesse Evans at the time was put into a posse, hired by the sheriff to go out and enforce a writ that the sheriff had on John Tunstall. So therefore, he was a deputized lawman at the time.
Came up over the hill, and there's Tunstall with 2 of his boys. You can see Billy headed up to a little place hiding with the other guys.
I remember riding in the back with Bonnie and John Middleton.
We were driving horses up to Lincoln. I look over my shoulder and I see a posse coming after us. Dolan and his men, they ride up to us. I knew something bad was gonna happen. I could feel it.
I remember Middleton yelling at me, "Follow me, follow me."
In the confusion, we got separated.
The last words that I could remember were, "What, John? What?" And the rest, I don't know.
Well, we saw Tunstall by himself. All the other boys had done a lit out. So I followed him. I had a little bit of business and conversation I wanted to have with him. You know, those English folks, they like to talk.
I still thought that I would be able to reason with them.
I'm not saying that I issued any order that Tunstall should be killed.
I was just trying to have a conversation with him. That was it. He drew first, he fired first.
Did I draw my gun to defend myself? No.
I didn't see it, but I could hear the gunshots. I knew what had happened. They had killed Tunstall.
The next thing I heard was a gunshot, a bullet to my chest.
Was my bullets to kill him? Might have been. But that started everything. That was the beginnings of the Lincoln County Wars right there. And that was me right there.
Well, as we were riding back, we ran into the rest of them that was coming back with us to Lincoln. And they said that Tunstall had drawn on them, so they fired at him in self-defense and took him out from there.
3 against 1, and it was self-defense?
We didn't say that Mr. Tunstall was a very smart man to take on 3 of them.
They brought Tunstall's body in. I swore I was gonna get some of them before I died. And I did.
Tunstall's murder, as it cannot be called anything other than that, ignited the Lincoln County War. With Lincoln's Law firmly in the hands of Sheriff Brady, Tunstall's sympathizers and warriors went to Justice of the Peace Wilson to be deputized and to bring Tunstall's murderers to justice. The Regulators would form a formidable and opposing army to Dolan and Brady's bunch. Quickly, the Regulators decided that the best way to beat their enemy was to eliminate him.
Brady's murdering thugs, they treated John like an animal, and they hunted him down. And the cowards, they shot him in the back of the head. A young man named William Bonney, he came up to John's body, and he said, "I will get every last one of them before I die."
They buried Tunstall, and I couldn't even be there for it.
There was trouble in Lincoln. It eventually ended. There was trouble all over the West at that time, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
What's it going to hurt to talk about it now?
I'm not going to talk about that period in my life.
There's a saying of take off the white gloves, and I knew that was the time.
Justice of the Peace Wilson swore us in. I was deputized. I was the law.
We were all upset and looking for something to do to take care of the problem, and we hadn't quite yet decided what we were going to do, but something was coming.
We called ourselves the Regulators.
Okay, Morton, Baker, and McCloskey.
Those 3 guys?
Morton and Baker were all involved in this, and we had warrants for their arrest because they're involved in it, and we found them, and we captured them, and we took them prisoner, and we're taking them back to Lincoln, and
let's just say they got what they deserved.
We got into Blackwater Draw, and well, somehow or other, those guys ended up shot. I'm not really sure how, but they did, and it was okay with me.
Sheriff Brady, I heard about it. I found it unfortunate.
I don't remember who suggested that Sheriff Brady had to die, but I do remember that I volunteered to do it.
All of us wanted it done, and we knew also that Mr. McSween hadn't said to do it, but you know, you talk in conversation and things come up, and the way things are said, it seemed to us like he also was in favor of going after Brady.
Did I have anything to do with it? Absolutely not.
April 1st.
We were headed down toward the courthouse to go take care of some business there from the Tunstall store.
We saw Sheriff Brady and his deputies walking down the street.
And so as we passed her in the middle of the store, I told them, "Don't worry about it, boys. I don't think they'd be brave enough to come into Lincoln and try anything."
As soon as he was close enough, we let him have what was coming to him. April Fools, Sheriff Brady.
It's all over with. It's all done. We need to move on.
Walked out in the street. I was looking for the warrant for McSween, but wanted to get my rifle back too.
It wasn't the best of me. But it was war.
Went to grab my rifle and Billy Matthews shot me in the leg. It wasn't the first time I got shot. It just motivated me to kill more of those bastards.
I am not a man of revenge. I believe it was just a time of... It was a very hard time in Lincoln County, and events led to the death of Brady. And that's all I care to say about that.
Yeah, I was one of the guys that shot Brady. And yeah, I was indicted for it. But this was war. This is what happens in war.
For 5 months, the Lincoln County War raged across the territory. Men on both sides were ambushed or killed in open battle. Alexander McSween fled Lincoln for fear of his life and lived in the field with the regulators. As a man who abhorred violence, he was ill-suited to lead his army into battle. Finally, in July 1878, McSween had had enough. He returned to Lincoln with his army, determined never to be driven out again. The showdown between McSween's and Dolan's armies would forever become known as the Battle of Lincoln. The battle lasted 5 days and would mark the decisive end of the Lincoln County War.
So I decided to go home, and I was determined to never be driven out again. Not alive, anyway.
The 5-day battle? I was there. Everybody was there. There were McSweeney peoples spread out on roofs all over town. All of our people spread out all over town. We had cavalry coming into town. Everybody was scared of shooting the cavalry, especially Billy.
It'd been 5 days of us trapped in that house.
And I had outlaws on one side and men with guns on the other, and I couldn't believe how I got here. I am an attorney, I am a man of God, and I knew that I had to at least get my wife out alive.
McSweeney and them boys have been in the house for 5 days.
So we sent Susan out to the protection of the cavalry, and then they set the house on fire.
Sheriff Pepin wanted us out, so he lit the thing on fire.
Burning them out was the best way to end this whole thing. So, I sent somebody in, they lit a fire in the kitchen, came back out, and we just waited.
It was a very long few hours of dread and fear.
Eventually, we knew they'd come out. Either guns blazing or hands held high.
I was starting to literally suffocate. I wondered, was this it? Was this the day I was going to meet my maker?
It got so hot, we had to make an escape. Otherwise, we were all going to burn to death.
I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared.
There was flames everywhere, there was smoke. Couldn't breathe. McSween was sitting in the corner, he had accepted death.
So there came a time when I felt like the time was to give up. And then William came up to me, enthusiastic, and he said, "We can get out of here."
I knew I had to step up, I had to take action. I had to get us out of there.
At that moment, I felt that William became the leader, and my time had come to an end. And I was grateful to have that burden off my shoulders.
So we came up with a plan. On my signal, we were going to go out the back, try to lose ourselves in the river. Hopefully we were all going to make it out alive.
So the moment of truth had come. There was smoke, there was fire. It was baking in there, and dark was upon us, and we decided to make a run for the river out the back door.
They gave the signal. We left the house, but we only got about halfway.
Fire illuminated the backyard. It was like
That's when
all
all hell
hell
broke
had broken
loose.
loose.
Bullets flying everywhere.
Oh, we were all fired. everybody was fine. They were trying to make it to the river out the back of the house. But everybody knew that that was the direction they were going to have to go because that was the only place you could go.
We went as hard as we could into that creek, just hoping everyone was behind us.
Blood flying, men crying out in pain.
I think all but 3 of them made it.
And this was now the inferno that I had to run through.
One way or another, they had to get out of there, and we knew that we were going to have to kill them.
With everything I saw, I decided that the best action to take would be to surrender.
When McSween came out, and everybody knew that he didn't go heels.
And I called out, I am McSween, and I shall surrender.
He was standing there with his hands up, and somebody said, I ain't never gonna surrender.
And at that moment, time slowed down, and I saw all the smug look on their faces. Those thugs had gotten exactly what they wanted. So in that moment, I decided I would not let my last words be that I surrender. And I looked them dead in the eye and told them, I will never surrender.
So we opened fire.
And then everything just turned black.
He should have armed himself. But when I shot him, he dropped right there, dead as a stone.
So you're wondering if one of my bullets took out McSween? I sure the hell hope so.
By that point, wasn't much left to fight for in the Lincoln County War. What was left of the regulators, we met up with the Chisholms. That's when I saw Sally again. Did I mention that I liked her? We helped Doc and Charlie move up to Fort Sumner. That was the end of the regulators.
With Tunstall and McSween killed, and Dolan almost in ruins, there was nothing left to fight for in the Lincoln County War. Both factions drifted back to previous pursuits as the regulators moved east toward Fort Sumner. Turning his thoughts from war to women, Billy made sure to spend time once again with the Princess of the Plains, John Chisholm's niece, Sally Chisholm.
My first impression when I met William Bonney was he was a very sharp-dressed man. He paid certain attention to detail and was a real gentleman to me.
4th of July, went to the Chisholm Ranch. That's where I met Sally Chisholm.
His friends were a little rough around the edges, and he could be at times too, but was always very sweet to me.
My God, she was beautiful. She was the kind of girl that they write poetry about.
And I was just a young girl, only 16, and although I had many suitors, I appreciated his attention to me.
Did I mention that I liked her? I think she liked me too.
That July 4th, there was some skirmish at the ranch.
That didn't stop us from having fun. The regulators were well armed and the ranch was well protected.
No one really got hurt, but bullets were flying and I was there. I get pretty much left alone with the whole thing being a lady and all. Billy and I, we danced the night away and had so much fun. I've never laughed as much as I did that night. And he left away for a little while to Roswell, and he came back with some candy for me, which was very sweet.
I'd grown really fond of her. I really enjoyed her company.
First invited me one time to go riding along the river's edge, and we ended up getting into a race because I'm just a little competitive, and I won, of course, and I want to believe that he didn't just allow me to win, to be kind. Unfortunately, we all have different paths in life, and our destinies would not end up being the same destination.
It was hard saying goodbye to Sally.
I do treasure the time we had together.
I had a feeling that I was going to see her again.
As far as intimacy goes, or anything like that, as you know, I am a lady.
She was a little bit of a free spirit. And I like that.
And as a lady, I don't give out too many details of my personal life. But I am very fond of Billy. I always will be. I wrote about Willie often in my diary, just to paint a picture of that time in my life that maybe we'd never get back again. 2 candy hearts given to me by William Bonney, 22nd of August, 1878. That September, fall had come a little early, and the leaves started to change, and there was that cool crisp in the air.
What was left of the Regulators, we met up with the Chisholms.
We were at Red River Springs, and that's
when I saw Sally again.
he never would say goodbye to me. And he did that day, though. I don't know if he knew it in his heart, but that was the last time I ever saw him.
Modern-day Fort Sumner is a quiet town lying on New Mexico's eastern plains. In 1880, Fort Sumner was an abandoned army fort purchased by Lucian Maxwell and then run by his son Pete. This distant outpost was free of law and a perfect base for Billy's growing cow and horse theft activities. Of course, the young man's interest in Old Fort Sumner wasn't strictly the lack of law, but the presence of its many beautiful women, more than a few of which took a shine to the young outlaw.
My name is Paulita Maxwell. I live in Fort Sumner, New Mexico Territory. Fort Sumner was a gay little place. The weekly dance was an event. And pretty girls from Santa Rosa, Puerta de Luna, Anton Chico, and from towns and ranches 50 miles away drove to attend it. Billy the Kid cut quite a gallant figure at these affairs. He was not handsome, but he had a certain sort of boyish good looks. He was always smiling and good-natured, and very polite, and danced remarkably well. And the little Mexican beauties made eyes at him from behind their fans and used all their coquetries to capture him, and were very vain of his attentions.
I was rustling cattle in Fort Sumner. It was nice. It was more peaceful than it had been in a long time.
When I was just 16 years old, Fort Sumner was really wild and lawless and quite beautiful, actually, and very romantic.
We'd go dancing again, go gambling, just like when we were younger, when the Regulators started.
Yeah, there was lots of bailes, the dances, and there were lots of handsome, rugged men coming through. Some that you may know, some William H. Bonney, maybe.
Met a girl, Paulita. She was nice.
He was quite the gentleman, actually, and he had this boyish charm about him and these beautiful blue eyes, and He could bailar, he could dance so well, so beautifully, and he could sing. He had this angelic tenor voice.
Life was easy. Life was pretty good.
People always ask me if Billy and I were queridas, if we were sweethearts, if I was his love. Now I have to say that we were not, but that if he did love me, I would have married him. I would have married him and I would have gone to Mexico with him.
Come on.
I mean, everybody loved Billy. I mean, he was... How could you not? I mean, they try to make him like he's such a bad man, but he was such a beautiful boy.
We'd steal horses in New Mexico and go sell them in Texas.
He was such a beautiful man. And like I said, if he had loved me, I would have married him.
Yeah, I guess I had a couple girlfriends along the way. Always made the ride home that much sweeter.
And Pat Garrett, he was so jealous of Billy. And he would not stop. He would not stop till he was dead. And that nasty book he wrote, full of lies. And if I could, I'd take every copy and burn them. All of them.
They captured us, took us over to Fort Sumner. Asked if I could see Paulita one more time. Wanted to have the last couple moments with her. Say goodbye.
It was a beautiful night. He wanted to say goodbye to me. And that pinche, sorry, I don't say words like that. That man, Pat Garrett, he wouldn't let him free to say goodnight to me. So we did get a kiss under the mistletoe.
President Hayes, unhappy with the performance of Territorial Governor Axtell, replaced him on October 1st, 1879, with Civil War Union General Lew Wallace. Wallace's mandate was clear: once and for all bring law and order to Lincoln County. Having witnessed the murder of Susan McSween's lawyer, Houston Chapman, William Bonney gambled that Wallace might be open to a deal. Bonney would provide testimony of the killing in exchange for a pardon for his own misdeeds. The Civil War general and the killer of Sheriff Brady were about to meet, face to face.
Around that time, New Mexico got a new governor.
Governor Lew Wallace.
Didn't really think it was going to change my life at all.
Legally appointed by the President of the United States.
Boy, was I wrong.
President Hayes appointed me here to clean up Lincoln County. The courts would not convict, and it was my job to take care of all this unpleasantness, to legally put these people away where they belong. When I came back, I received a letter from a young man named William H. Bonney.
To His Excellency the Governor, General Lew Wallace. Dear Sir, I have heard that you will give $1,000 for my body, which, as I can understand, it means alive as a witness. I know it is as a witness against those that murdered Mr. Chapman. If it was so as that I could appear in court, I could give the desired information, but I have indictments against me for things that happened in the late Lincoln County War, and am afraid to give up because my enemies would kill me. The day that Mr. Chapman was murdered, I was in Lincoln at the request of good citizens to meet Mr. J.J. Dolan, to meet his friends so as to be able to lay aside our arms and go to work. I was present when Mr. Chapman was murdered, and I know who did it. And if it were not for those indictments, I would have made it clear before now. If it is in your power to annul those indictments, I hope you will do so as to give me a chance to explain. Please send me an answer telling me what you can do. You can send an answer by bearer. I have no wish to fight anymore. Indeed, I have not raised an arm since your proclamation. As to my character, I refer to any of the citizens, for the majority of them are my friends, and they have been helping me all they could. I'm called Kid Antrim, but Antrim is my stepfather's name. Waiting for an answer, I remain your obedient servant, W.H. Bonney.
Saying that he had some information and he wanted to possibly get a pardon from me for this information. So I dispatched a letter to the young man hideout to meet me in Lincoln.
Now come to the house of Squire Wilson at 9 o'clock next Monday night, alone. I don't mean his office, but his residence. Now follow along the foot of the mountain south of the town. Come in on that side. Knock on the east door. I have the authority to exempt you from prosecution if you will testify to what you say you know. Now the object of the meeting at Squire Wilson's is to arrange the matter in a way to make your life safe. To do the utmost secrecy is to be used. So come along, don't tell anyone, not a living soul, where you are coming or the object. If you could trust Jesse Evans, now you can trust me.
I met with the governor. We made an agreement that I would testify against Dolan for the murder of Chapman.
I was interested in convicting the men who killed that one-armed lawyer, Chapman.
He promised me a pardon. At least that's the way I remember it.
Now I knew I couldn't offer him a pardon, but leniency was a possibility.
I had that letter. I had an agreement with Wallace. And he went back on that.
Bonney was the murderer of the great Sheriff Brady at the time.
I went in front of the grand jury and I testified against Dolan and Evans. And that means I broke their treaty. I knew what that meant. If I didn't have protection, I was going to end up dead.
Now, District Attorney Reinerson did not follow my orders, or he didn't get what I had sent him, that Bonney was to be released after this, and he arrested him and sent him back to Lincoln.
I had a deal with the governor. I wasn't going to be prosecuted. But that son of a bitch Reinerson had other ideas. They staged an arrest. They put me in jail. I was supposed to be a free man, but I knew I wasn't.
Now, after this, I went back to Santa Fe and never returned to Lincoln again. But my justification of saying this and doing this is that he was arrested and went to jail and then broke out of jail before I could help the young man.
I had an agreement with Wallace. I did everything that I promised him, and he did nothing that he promised me. At that point, I knew I had no show. So me, Tom, and Doc, we saddled up and rode out of Lincoln.
2 years later, that young man ended up in jail in Santa Fe at the hands of Pat Garrett. I received a letter from him forthwith asking me to come and see him. In fact, his letter was threatening to send to the newspaper the letters I had sent to him earlier. I quickly diffused this by sending a letter identical to the newspaper, the New Mexican, out of Santa Fe.
He was 2 blocks away and he did nothing to help me. I was going to be tried for the murder of Roberts and Brady.
Now, I sent that letter to the Santa Fe New Mexican, and I explained the circumstances around it. I had it published, and I never heard another word from young Billy.
He had promised me. I put my life on the line, and he wasn't there.
He had a chance to turn himself around and refused to. I gave him every chance in the world.
With Bonnie's chances of a pardon quickly slipping away, he returned to the life of a rustler in and around Fort Sumner. The powers that be in New Mexico Territory wanted the kid and his gang gone once and for all, so they turned to former buffalo hunter, saloon keeper, and gambler Patrick Floyd Garrett to run for Lincoln County Sheriff. In 1880, Bonnie campaigned on behalf of Lincoln's current sheriff, George Kimball, who turned a blind eye to the gang's activities. If Garrett was elected, priority number one would be to rid New Mexico of one William H. Bonney.
1880.
The larger cattlemen come to me and they decided that they wanted somebody to run for sheriff that hadn't participated in the Lincoln County War.
I wasn't really wanting any change. I was happy with the sheriff we had.
They convinced me that I needed to run for sheriff, and I thought that'd be a good thing to do.
Pat Garrett won the election for sheriff.
Garrett got elected sheriff in October 1880.
I wanted Kimball to win. Can't win them all, right?
My job as sheriff, when I ran, that I was either going to capture or kill the kid.
Let's face it, Garrett was elected to get rid of me. And to get rid of guys like me.
I knew, though, that the kid was not going to be captured. He'd already escaped too many times.
I knew Pat well enough. I knew he wasn't going to chase me too hard.
After I won the election, I knew my job was to capture the kid. That's what I was elected for, and to stop the rustling in Lincoln County.
Some paper in Las Vegas wrote a story about me. Called me Billy the Kid, killer of lawmen. Another paper in New York picked up that story. Just like that. Suddenly everyone knew who Billy the Kid was.
Okay, I was running back in those days with Rudabaugh and Billy Wilson.
Winter of 1880. Sheriff Garrett shot and killed Tom. He was a good friend. He was a really good friend. He didn't deserve to die like that.
I decided that I needed to get out of the business if I was really going to settle down and survive these years.
I met Charlie Bowdry, and we had a meeting. And he had just gotten married, and he wanted to finally go straight, but he had all these warrants out for him.
Garrett and I had a talk, and he said, yeah, it's possible. There were some citizens that would stand up for me in Roswell, and I just had to separate ties with those guys.
You know, I told Charlie if he would come in, let me know where the kid was, put out wrestling, then we could work on getting him a pardon. Unfortunately, he didn't do that.
I said, well, you know, if they come out to the ranch or something, they stop by to say hello, I can't just run them off and say, get away from me. They'd be mighty suspicious of me and think bad things that I wasn't doing.
He just couldn't say no to the kid. A lot of people couldn't. And he paid the ultimate price.
What I did was I went back to Yerby's and I quit. Moved Manuela into Fort Sumner so she'd be safe, and then I went out and lived on the range. Just on my own, camped out. Figured they wouldn't be able to find me in any one place, and I could get things situated to safely turn myself in.
But at that point, we knew we couldn't stay. Me, Charlie, Dave, and Billy decided to get out of New Mexico. We went to Stinking Springs. We were gonna make our way out.
Now, would it have been smarter for him to go to Mexico, go back in, go over to Arizona, maybe Colorado, maybe? But I knew he wasn't going to do that. So, I knew that I was going to find him in the territory, and that's what I did.
We slept in the rock house. And that morning, Charlie went outside to feed his horses.
When we caught up with the kid and his gang at Stinking Springs. It was cold. I knew we'd nearly caught him at the Brazil Wilcox Ranch. I knew that they wouldn't go far. The snow was pretty deep. It was cold. So when we saw the tracks heading off in that direction, I knew the only place that they could go was probably the house at Stinking Springs.
Okay, well, we camped in that rock house when we got there. And the next day, our plan was to get up and head out of the territory.
As soon as it turned light, I could hear some rustling inside.
I got up a little early and I went outside to feed my horse and check on the other horses and take care of them.
Billy was wearing his sombrero with a green hat band.
And as soon as I stepped out the door, it looked like it was going to be a beautiful day. I stepped outside.
As soon as someone came out of the door and he had his head down, but he had that sombrero with that green hat band on, I knew it was the kid.
And bam! Somebody fires a rifle at Garrett and hits me in the stomach, and I fall back inside the house with the other guys.
The guy that I thought was the kid stumbled back into the building.
Okay, so I get up off of the floor, and Billy hands me my gun, and he says, "You've been killed."
And it wasn't until a few minutes later that Wilson called out and said that Beaudry had been hit and they wanted him to come out. That's when I'd realized, that I'd shot the wrong man.
And I knew I'd been killed because of where I'd been shot. And he said, "You've been killed. Take your gun and go out there and shoot some of them."
And he comes toward me and he says,
I wish. I wish.
He came stumbling into my arms and we laid him down there and he died right there on the blanket. I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry for his wife, but he made his choice.
We knew we weren't going to get away. Garrett had the drop on us.
We're not letting the kid get away this time.
So we decided to come out. I wanted a good hot meal. But before I did, I buried a gun and some money for when I escaped. Be able to come back and grab that. Get out of New Mexico. Oh, since we were going to have to leave our guns, I went ahead and pissed on them for when the posse had to grab them.
After the kid came out and we shook hands and everything, then I sent Stewart in the East End to get the weapons.
If I could see Garrett again, I'd like to tell him, "You were right."
With Billy in custody, Garrett escorted his prisoner to Santa Fe, where the kid waited to be moved to Mesilla to be tried for the murder of Sheriff Brady. Knowing he could only be sentenced to hang if found guilty, Bonnie stayed alert for any possible chance at escape. Guarded day and night, his luck was on the verge of running out. His best chance to leave New Mexico and start over now seemed to be a distant memory.
They took me to trial in Mesilla for the murder of Sheriff Brady. And of course, they found me guilty. I killed him.
After the kid was found guilty at Mesilla
and my sentence was hanging. If I had the chance, I'd kill him again. Garrett then took me back to Lincoln. Had me put in the old Murphy store.
I made sure that he was handcuffed, he was shackled, and he was chained to the floor. The kid was not going to escape.
They had me guarded 24 hours a day.
The two deputies I had were Bob Ollinger and James Bell.
I remember my guards. J.W. Bell? He was good.
People liked him, but he did his duty.
Ollinger? He used to work me up until I could hardly contain myself.
Ollinger, he did his duty as well. He was a little more of a hothead, a little more emotional. Everybody asked me, why did I leave town when the kid is shackled upstairs? Part of my job as sheriff of Lincoln County is to collect taxes. We've been running around the New Mexico Territory trying to find the kid. I was behind on collecting taxes, and the county needed the money. So I figured he's shackled to the floor. Bell and Ollinger are there. I can go overnight, go to White Oaks, I can collect the money, and I can get back in time, and there's no problems.
Day after day, I worked on finding a way out. I knew I had to get my freedom. I knew I had to get back to Sumner. If I didn't, I was gonna hang.
So Bell and I had a rotation, and it was my turn to take the 5 prisoners from Tularosa to the Wortley Hotel. I guess the kid knew that rotation.
And then one day, I got my chance.
So I was about halfway through eating my meal, and I heard 2 gunshots go off.
Bell was left guarding me. I asked if I could use the outhouse.
There's been a lot of theories about how the kid got the gun.
Took me down the stairs. On the way back, I had managed to slip my hands out of the cup.
As soon as you go up the stairs and you turn right around there, that's where we kept the weapons in that first room.
Turned around, smacked him with it, wrestled his gun away from him.
My feeling is the kid ran up ahead of Bell, turned the corner, put his shoulder against the door, came in, got a pistol, and turned around and met Bell coming up the stairs.
I told him not to run. I told him not to run, but he ran. And at that point, I didn't have any choice. I had to shoot him.
Are you saying it's Bell's fault?
I don't want to say anything bad about a dead man.
In my mind, I was thinking, damn, the kid tried to escape. So I stood up and I said, Bell must have shot the kid. I took off towards the courthouse.
Now, Ollinger, on the other hand, I didn't mind killing him at all. I scooped up that bastard's own shotgun and went and waited for him at the window.
I got almost to the entryway and I heard a voice from the second floor.
I yelled down at him, "Look up, old boy. See what you get."
So about that time, the groundskeeper, Goss, came running up yelling, "The kid killed Bell!" And I said, "Yes, he's killed me too."
Bye-bye, Bob.
I guess as famous as Billy Kid became, him killing me probably made me legendary as well.
I found out, the next day that the kid had escaped and that Bell and Ollinger had been murdered. I still feel bad about that to this day.
Broke the chain on my leg shackles. Got some guns. Got a horse. And I rode out of Lincoln as fast as I could.
All I knew is that I knew he was going to stay in the territory. The kid was not going to leave.
And the only place I could think to go back to was Sumner.
People can question me all they want. They weren't there. It wasn't their responsibility. It was my responsibility, and I made the best decision.
Billy's spectacular escape from the Lincoln County Jail captured the imagination of the public from coast to coast. Overnight, he became the most noted desperado in the country. For Billy, it was merely survival, but for the public, it was the tale of a bloodthirsty, ruthless killer who wouldn't hesitate to take a life. By this point, the kid could only call one place home, Fort Sumner. With no better prospects, he rode his stolen horse east toward the village and into a date with destiny.
Yeah, it was devastating to hear that she was even interested in Billy the Kid, because he was not someone that you want your daughter or sister to be associated with.
The only place I could think to go back to was Sumner. I had friends there, I had girls there, and I had people that I could trust who would protect me.
The two deputies I took up to Fort Sumner was Kip McKinney and John Poe. But when we went up there, we were gonna meet my informant, and he didn't show. So we decided not to waste a trip. I was gonna go into Fort Sumner and talk with Pete Maxwell, see if he'd seen the kid.
Did I tip Garrett off that Billy was there? No. I didn't. I'm not saying that someone in my crew might have, but that's that.
I'm not going to divulge who my informant was, for fear that I don't want to disparage his reputation.
The night of July 14th, I remember it was a pretty hot night. I remember I had a few drinks that night. I'm guessing I went to bed around 9, 10 o'clock.
When we first got to Sumner, we put our horses out by the peach orchard out there, and we just wanted to wait and listen. There was a party, a fandango going in the town, and so we just sort of waited, and then later that evening, closer to midnight, I decided we're going to go in and we're going to talk to Pete Maxwell.
Yeah, I was with someone. Doesn't matter who. All that matters is that I was where I wanted to be. I had some company, had a nice hot meal. I was in my element.
I don't think I would consider myself a friend of Billy the Kid at that point.
When we went in that night, I wanted to go in so no one else saw us. And so when I went up on the porch and I told McKinney and Poe to stay down by the gate, and I walked in, the door was already open because it was a warm evening.
Yeah, later that night, Garrett walked in my room, woke me up, really startled me.
And when I walked into Maxwell's room, his bed was on the far side. I went over there and sat at the head of his bed, and I shook him awake and told him, asked him if he'd seen the kid.
I knew he was in town. So I told him that. I told him he was in town somewhere, I didn't know where.
At that time, Pete said he had seen the kid. He was around, but he didn't know where he was exactly at that moment.
I had heard that Maxwell had slaughtered a side of beef and took a butcher knife and went to go cut some. Hey, a man can work a pretty good appetite when he's predisposed.
All of a sudden, I hear a voice outside going, Ken S.
Ken S.
Ken S.
Yes, Ken S.
Went up onto Pete's porch. Saw two men there I didn't recognize. Drew my gun on them. Called out to them. Ken S. Ken S.
And next thing I know, a person backs into Maxwell's bedroom.
I backed into Maxwell's bedroom as soon as I could.
It was dark in there, and then I think as soon as he put his hand on the bed and he backed up, he realized there was another figure. And I think he saw my outline, but he didn't exactly know who I was. And as he backs up, he says, Ken S. Pete. Who is it?
It was pitch black in there. And I walked in, I said, Pete, who are those guys out there?
And that's when I said to Garrett, that's him, that's Billy.
But as soon as the kid backs up, then I pulled my pistol.
Next thing I knew, I saw the flash of a muzzle. A bullet hit me, right below the heart. Yeah, I know who it was. I saw his face and looked him in the eye. It was Sheriff Pat Garrett.
I jumped out of bed and ran out of the room, and Garrett followed me out.
You never saw Billy Bonney before you pulled the trigger?
I knew who it was in front of me. I recognized that voice.
The news of the kid's killing swept the territory and the country like wildfire. Almost as soon as the young man's heart stopped beating, people began to second-guess Garrett. Garrett shot the wrong man. He made a deal with the kid to get away. Someone else was buried in the grave. Or even more far-fetched, a saddle and some large rocks were buried in place of Billy the Kid. In the confusion that followed the kid's death, everyone seemed to have a different version of what had happened.
July 14th, 1881 was the worst night of my life. I was in my room. A lot of people say that I was in Pete's room, but I was not in Pete's room.
I come across hearing 2 gunshots.
I was with Billy. Con mi amor.
Yeah, we jumped out of that room pretty quick because we know Billy. If Garrett had missed, we'd both be dead.
And he was murdered just a few feet away from me.
And I knew it was either Garrett killed him or Billy killed Garrett.
After I shot, we heard the body hit the floor. And then as soon as that happens, we get up, we light a candle, and there's Bonnie laying on the floor. He's got a knife in one hand, and he's got a pistol in the other.
I see Pete and Garrett all standing there together, and I see them, they're pointing to the bedroom, and
Delivina was, she ran in. She was the only brave one. Oh, it broke her heart. She loved him like, maybe she loved him more than I did.
none of those cowards would go in there and see if Billy was alive.
And it all happened so fast and it was so terrible. I couldn't go in there to see. I didn't want it to be true.
So pretty quickly, Deluvina lit a candle, went into the room, placed it on the windowsill. That's when she saw Billy was dead.
Poe and McKinney ran in the room to see what had happened when they heard the shots.
Yeah, there was a lot of confusion. It was chaotic, and a lot of Billy's friends were yelling at Garrett. There's a lot of anger directed at him and his deputies.
Some people said I shot the wrong man. I knew who it was. As soon as that candle was lit, I knew what Bonnie looked like. Maxwell knew what Bonnie looked like. Poe and McKinney didn't. I understand that, okay? But I did. I shot the kid, and he was laying on that floor.
You butchered him. He was lying face down, and I couldn't really go closer than that.
Did you ever hear the name Billy Barlow before?
I've heard the name Billy Barlow before, but don't know him personally.
No one slept that night. it's all kind of a blur, really. But I remember bells going off and just everyone in a frenzy. Just I remember the ladies lit candles for Billy, and people came and saw him, filtered in and out.
After that, they had a coroner's inquest come in. They exonerated me, said that it was self-defense. And after that, they took the body away.
We of the jury unanimously find that William Bonney has been killed by a shot on the left breast near the region of the heart. The same having been fired with a gun in the hand of Pat F. Garrett. And our verdict is that the deed of said Garrett was justifiable homicide. And we are unanimous in the opinion that the gratitude of all the community is due to the said Garrett for his deed and is worthy of being rewarded.
Yeah, there were rumors that Billy was with a female before the incident.
When Billy escaped, he came back to Fort Sumner for me. Not Salsa. And I am the reason that he did.
And she denied it, but I had my thoughts that it could be Paulita.
Mi muchacho. Lo siento. I'm so sorry.
I knew how she felt about him, and yeah, Billy's not a good guy.
I mean, it's my brother, Pete, but I hated him in that moment. And Pat, I know I'm not supposed to say it, but I wanted him to die. And when he did, I was so relieved that he got what he deserved.
I was in Texas, and I had started a new life with a wonderful man. And I happened to go to the market. And I hadn't heard from him in quite a while. And as I'd moved on with my life as he had his. And I happened to glance at a paper they had out.
Why didn't you have a picture taken? It's New Mexico territory. There isn't a photographer just in every town. Fort Sumner is a small town. He was on a circuit and he wasn't in Fort Sumner that day.
I was never ready. Although I knew someday I was never ready to hear that last goodbye. And when I saw those words on that paper, I heard Billy's goodbye once more.
He was gone. My boy Billy was gone.
And that would end the story of Billy the Kid right then and there. That's what I thought. I would not do anything differently. I knew if I didn't pull my pistol and if I didn't shoot first, the kid was going to do the same.
If I saw Garrett again, I wouldn't say a thing. I'd pull the trigger first this time.
Billy was buried the following day next to his pals Tom Folliard and Charlie Bowdry, and life, as it did in New Mexico territory, went on. From his lonely grave sprang a legend that would fascinate people for over 100 years. He's been fashioned into a psychotic killer, a Robin Hood, a misunderstood youth, and a brave warrior standing up against the Santa Fe Ring by various historians and storytellers throughout the years. Billy led a complicated life in a complicated time in this country's history. To judge him and his actions against modern standards does a disservice to the man and to the legend. Whatever secrets Billy left behind that night might never be revealed.
If I could talk to Billy one more time, I wouldn't say anything. I would just hold him and kiss him and look at him. He was so beautiful.
Was Paulita pregnant that night or around this time? I don't want to talk about that. That's family business.
I know that so many people have worked so hard to keep this from being truth, but yes, my first girl was Billy's. I was pregnant when he died. I never told her. Nobody knew. People guessed. I was married right away so that people wouldn't guess. And she died so young at 16.
Yeah, Deluvina seemed devastated. She was a fan of Billy the Kid, but she didn't blame me. I don't want to talk about this either.
I hated those men, and I'm glad I lived long enough to see them dead and buried.
If I was there, it could have been me. That's why I left. Billy was never going to leave. He was going to die in New Mexico.
Billy. Oh, my sweet Willie. I wish things could have been different. And it could be you and me raising cattle out here in New Mexico. And I'm sorry you're gone.
I don't think Billy should have been killed. Yes, he did some things in his past, but we all did, whether we want to speak about them or not. Those were terrible times. They were rough. They were vicious. You did what you needed to survive.
I felt no remorse of his death. He had a chance to turn himself around and refused to.
Billy did things that he knew he shouldn't. Pat Garrett did things he knew was wrong. People say I did the same. That was just the times.
A man who spends his life killing other men should not be surprised when he is killed. You live by the sword, you die by the sword.
I owe no one answers about what happened during the Lincoln County War. I'll never talk about it, ever.
Billy Bonney, he'd never amount to anything. Just a two-bit kid running around Lincoln, looking for someone to take care of. That's what I think of Billy.
There are people who believe that Garrett helped Bonnie escape, that he lived a long, luxurious life, that his body's not actually buried in Fort Sumner. I'm not one of those people. Because having known Bonnie, I lived a nice, fruitful life. I'm sure he would have came after me if he was still alive.
If I were able to go back to that night, would I do anything different? I just wish it happened sooner, that's it.
Why are you telling me all this?
July 14th, 1881, Billy the Kid was shot and killed. There's nothing else to say about that.
Will the hangman, he's been calling out my name, but I shot my way out of Lincoln Town today. I can see it in the distance where I make my final stay. And if Garrett tries to take me, he'll die by my own hand. When I see you smile in the sunlight, and I lay with her for the last time, and the moon is high, it's my time to die. 'Cause it's my last night in Sumner.
My legal name is William Henry Roberts. Brushy Bill Roberts, that's correct, sir. Yes, sir, I was Billy the Kid.
Did you take part in what was known as the Lincoln County War?